how Cathie Wood bought Goldman Sachs. So I've talked about pieces of this in various podcasts. I want to tie them together a little bit. So Cathie Wood talks about how a lot of the S&P is going to be 500 is going to be disrupted because of innovation, because of these 5 key innovation platforms that she talks about, the 14 technologies built on top of them. And that's true, especially because, as she indicates, a lot of the Fortune 500, the S&P 500, and the Fortune 500 is also turning over as a result faster and faster than ever. To go from zero to, $1 billion companies much faster than it ever was before because of these exponential technologies and because of the pandemic and a lot of other things. But a lot of CEOs are not investing in these exponential technologies. Instead, they're investing in like stock buybacks and making as much profit for themselves as they can over the short term, in terms of the stock price. But the stock price is really going to separate the 1% from the 1% of the 1%. And I'm going to explain how that happens. So in terms of the innovators, like Tesla's an innovator, a lot of other companies are innovators that are using AI, robotics, Amazon and other companies, Facebook, VR. What happens is the companies that are not as innovative, they're not going to be able to compete. So they're going to have to cut their prices. So that's going to lead to a lot of deflation. And what's going to happen is eventually these companies are going to go out of business because you can't cut your way to prosperity. If you could, eventually you just cut, and then you'd be, a trillionaire. But obviously that's not how it works. Like when you cut, eventually you start cutting not only the fat, but you start cutting into the bone. And then when you start cutting into the bone, then you can't walk anymore because you need your bones to walk and get around. So what happens is when a lot of these companies go bust because they can't keep up with the innovation, the innovators are going to go from winner takes most to winner takes almost all. It's already like that. Like Amazon is the major e-commerce company in the United States. You do have eBay and you have Shopify in Canada. Facebook is the major social network. Google is the major search engine. Apple and Android are a duopoly, essentially. So every industry has one player, sometimes two, that make up almost the entire industry. So what's going to happen is, and Tesla's already ranked more than the top 9 automakers together, I think, in market cap, because people realize this. If GM and Ford and go bust, then Tesla could scoop them up on pennies of the dollar. Like those customers are going to go to Tesla anyway, but Tesla could scoop up the employees, could scoop up the factories, and the same thing is going to happen with Cathie Wood. So basically, just like people think that the financial markets are going to be disrupted by PayPal and Stripe, and Robinhood, and they are being disrupted by those things, and by DeFi. All those things are going to disrupt, the banks and the financial markets, and Bitcoin. But what's going to disrupt them additionally on top of that is the asset managers that are the winners. So Cathie Wood is already employing a huge amount of capital because she's right, and people have to go with the winners. So as the Goldman Sachs, and I'm not picking on Goldman Sachs because they might be a winner or a loser also, I don't know. I'm just using them as an example of like a long-standing traditional company that may or may not get the innovation of the future. So the companies, whether it be Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or Citibank or any of the established players that are not innovative enough, and I'm not saying which ones are and which ones aren't, but a lot of the traditional companies that are not innovative enough in the financial sector, eventually, just like the GMs and the Fords might go bankrupt compared to Tesla because they can't compete in EVs and autonomous, the financial companies in the world like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they can't compete with Cathie Wood on the innovation platforms because their analysts, their companies that they're analyzing are siloed and they don't understand the innovation like Cathie Wood understands it. So eventually, the customers are going to flock away. They're not going to want to put their money into Goldman Sachs, and again, I'm not picking winners or losers. I'm just using them as examples. They're not going to want to put their money into TD Ameritrade. They're not going to want to put their money into Vanguard. They're not going to want to put their money into Blackstone because those companies are not innovated on a financial space. And anything that is not innovating is going to die. It's going to die a slow death where they cut prices, and then it's going to die a big death. So it used to be that a lot of players could survive in the market. It used to be that you could have a Vanguard that was huge. You could have a BlackRock that is huge. You could have, a Citibank and a JP Morgan and a Goldman Sachs. Eventually, there's going to be huge consolidation. And Cathie Wood, if she continues to be right, she's going to buy all of them or most of them or some of them. Just like, the 2008 financial crisis, you had huge companies that went out of business or had to restructure or sold. The same thing is going to happen. And I predict in like 5 or 10 years, I don't know the exact time frame, that a lot of these big companies are going to be sold. And Cathie Wood might be the buyer.